Chapter 3 Organization of the Expedition. Off Cape Virgin, November 29, 1897. Quite as interesting as the work of an exploring expedition is the story of the initial inception of the idea and the various experiences, fortunes, and misfortunes of its projector. The difficulty of Columbus in securing the necessary funds for his bold voyage across the unknown waters of the West are familiar to all. A similar difficulty has fallen to the lot of Monsieur de Gerlache and every explorer who, even in the modern days of progress and scientific enlightenment, has tried to secure the necessary funds for a voyage of scientific exploration. When an area equal to 1/6 of the known land surface of the globe still remains unexplored, it is easy to formulate plans for journeys of discovery. But to secure the money for their execution is quite another matter. The ambition for Antarctic exploration in Lieutenant de Gerlache's mind is an old story. Exploration in general, he says, and Antarctic exploration in particular, has always had for me a particular fascination. When Professor Nordenskjold announced his project for South Polar exploration in 1892, I at once volunteered, but this, like many other projected southern expeditions, never materialized. The disappointment, however, only sharpened my ambition, as did every one of my many subsequent discouragements. In 1894, Lieutenant de Gerlache presented his first paper to the Royal Geographical Society of Brussels. It was the prospectus of this expedition in its infancy. In it, he made as strong a plea as possible for aid to promote exploration of the long-neglected Antarctic. The Society approved of the project, but offered, at that time, no financial assistance and even delayed its moral support. Various men of wealth were then appealed to, and after many disheartening disappointments, he enlisted the interest of Monsieur Solvay, a promoter of science, and with him the first glimmer of success dawned upon the horizon of the enterprise, which was the apple of my eye, the projected Belgian Antarctic expedition. Mr. Solvay laid the foundation of the fund with 25,000 francs, or $5,000. In addition, he generously furnished the money for a visit to the Arctic regions, a necessary preliminary schooling for an Antarctic explorer. A leave without pay was obtained from the Navy to promote the germinating interests of the coming expedition. In the early part of 1895, Gerlache went to Norway, and with the Norwegian sealers to Jan Mayen and to the East Greenland waters. Here he studied the life of the sealers at work, their methods, and the strange animal life. He studied the elements of ice navigation and, above all, caught the never-dying fascination which enraptures every intruder into the white boreal regions. On his return from the Arctic Sea, the expedition had assumed a more definite shape. The plan was matured, and definite arrangements were at once instituted. A prospectus was sent to King Leopold with a request for an audience, but it was refused. Gerlache then wrote a series of 5 articles, calculated to awaken interest in South Polar regions. These were published and given much prominence by L'Indépendance Belge. The articles, with the warm support of the press, aroused the needed enthusiasm and created the public sentiment which carried the project to its final issue. The Geographical Society, on its next meeting at the end of January 1896, opened a subscription list, but the fund swelled slowly. With the assistance of regimental festivities, cycling contests, exhibitions, and the help of various special committees through Belgium, 120,000 francs, $24,000, were realized. The government was then appealed to, and it responded with a grant of 100,000 francs, $20,000. The total sum was now $50,000. The road to success now seemed very easy, but other and unexpected troubles followed. The $50,000 with the greatest economy did not suffice for the many unlooked-for contingencies. Active preparations were begun early in June of 1896, though it was hardly expected that the expedition would be able to start during that year. Gerlache went to Norway, and there bought from Captain Petersen the Patria, according to a previous agreement, patriotically rechristening her Belgica. She seemed to be about the only ship of the Norwegian ice fleet at all suitable for the expedition, and even after she was secured, Lieutenant de Gerlache had to arrange with Mr. Christensen of Sandefjord to put in a new boiler, to make other necessary alterations and repairs. At about this time, also, definite arrangements were made with several of the prospective members of the expedition. Messrs. Arkowski, Danko, and Amundsen were enlisted in the project. In spite of many minor discouragements, the prospects now really seemed bright. The expedition, it was felt, would surely embark. But Gerlache was then again delayed, though undaunted, by finding that the fund at his command was not sufficient to properly equip the expedition. The final preparations of the vessel, the purchase of the scientific instruments, many of which were specially made, the want of ready money, and 1,000 little matters which needed attention combined to delay the expedition. In addition to these drawbacks, other scientific men were necessary to complete the staff. Special efforts were put forth to secure a competent zoologist, one who possessed qualities essential to a polar explorer, and this proved one of the greatest difficulties. Belgium and France were searched without avail, and finally Mr. Rakovica was found in Romania. But he was doing military duty, and it was feared that the diplomatic arrangements essential for his release would be slow. However, he was luckily freed at once to join the growing family of pioneers. For South Polar exploration, it is necessary to leave the Northern Hemisphere in July or August, for it should be remembered that the seasons in the South are the reverse of those in the North. January is the midsummer of the Antarctic. The vessels which are fitted to withstand ice jamming are slow. The heavy cumbersome timbers, the blunt bow, round bottom, fuel-saving engines, and small canvas are all excellent for ice navigation, but they are decided impediments to speed. The 1st of September was now at hand, and painful as the thought of a year's delay, it proved unavoidable. Lieutenant de Gerlache was in close communion with Commander Wandel of Copenhagen, who had charge of the Danish East Greenland expedition. This expedition, in its scientific aims, was more like the prospective Belgian expedition than any other venture, and furthermore, Captain Wandel was familiar with the United States exploring ship Blake, which had done splendid work in ascertaining the depths of the Pacific. From Commander Wandel, says Gerlache, I obtained not only valuable data, but much of his equipment at a nominal cost. In this way, the end of the summer was spent in Denmark, and in a similar way, the winter was spent in Norway. To visit Dr. Nansen and to prepare himself more thoroughly for the Antarctic, Gerlache made his home in Norway during the early months of winter. For a like reason, Lieutenant Danko accompanied him. They learned to travel on skis and experimented with sledges, winter clothing, and camp equipments. The best possible outfit was selected for the intended sledge journeys over the virgin South Polar lands. Many condensed and preserved foods, admirably adapted for polar journeys, are best obtained in Norway. From this experience, it followed that most of our provisions were Norwegian. Returning from Norway with the Belgica early in July of 1897, he found that all the money was spent, and he still needed many, very many important things. Again, says Gerlache, I sought aid by private subscriptions, and again we were doomed to disappointment. We now decided on a desperate effort. It was to arrange a public exhibition of the Belgica and its entire equipment, and either raise the additional financial support, or sell the whole outfit and abandon the project. The exhibition was very largely attended by the best people of Belgium. A fresh interest was created, and a new patriotic pride now arose in behalf of the expedition. A subscription feast was prepared, which, through the indefatigable efforts of Madame Osterrieth, became very popular and profitable. The festivities were held at a public park in Antwerp, which was handsomely decorated for the occasion. Special military gymnastics and cycling contests were among the attractions. The attendance was large, and the welfare of the Expedition Antarctique Belge was on every tongue. The occasion won for Madame Austerieth the title of Mother Antarctic, and for the expedition 10,000 francs. Mr. Cholert, the worthy Minister of the Interior, visited the Belgica as did many other deputies, and through them the government was asked for another 60,000 francs, an amount absolutely necessary to assure the successful issue of the expedition. This was granted, making the entire fund from all sources 300,000 francs, or about $60,000. With this, preparations were at once made to leave Antwerp, and the departure was announced for August 16th. Letters and telegrams with good wishes and friendly sentiments poured in from all sides at the last moment, but of these I can only mention a few. Captain Hofgaard of the Danish Navy, and a member of the famous Vega expedition, wired his compliments and good luck. Dr. Neumayer of Hamburg, who has advocated Antarctic exploration for 25 years, wired, "My most sincere wishes follow you toward the South Pole." Fridtjof Nansen, whose star of fame had just risen, wired, "Chance and luck follow you and the Belgica. May the voyage bring such rich scientific results as the careful preparations promise, and may it throw a new light over the darkest part of the world." We weighed anchor and drew out of Antwerp on August 16th. Many people gathered to see the starting, and all Antwerp seemed on foot to wish us bon voyage. Representatives from many French societies were there to congratulate us on our good fortune with the organization, and to wish the expedition unbounded success. The yachts of the Antwerp Yacht Club, under whose flag the Belgica sailed, showed their interest by salutations and a rich bedecking of flags. Amid the storm of cheers from the people on the quays, the tooting of whistles from neighboring crafts, and the thundering of cannons from places which we knew not, we slowly withdrew. After a few hours, Antwerp, with its friendly hilarity and its bustling activity, sank from view. Then, after a breath of ease and a moment of reflection, we felt that the hardest part of our work had been accomplished. At last, the hard-earned project was afloat, and, as if to force the pride of our work upon us, the Dutch cruiser Cartenaar followed us out to sea in company for 24 hours, an indication of neighborly affection which we keenly appreciated. This, we afterwards learned, was by order of the Dutch Queen Wilhelmina. Headwinds, against which no progress could be made, and a small accident to the engine made it necessary to put into Ostend. Here His Majesty King Leopold visited us, offering many congratulations on the success of the difficult task of organizing the first Belgian polar expedition. His Majesty took a sharp interest in the Belgica, and closely examined her many peculiar fixtures, finally offering his hand and many words of warm encouragement befitting the occasion. During the few hot days of August which were spent at Ostend, a teeming mass of fellow countrymen and women crowded the decks of the Belgica. It seemed, with the vessel loaded so heavily, with every cubic foot of space occupied, and even the bunks and staterooms piled full of useless articles, so that there was really no room for curiosity seekers, as if all Ostend and a good part of the outside world had been aboard. There came a time, however, when the ship must leave, when we must finally sever ourselves from the friendly atmosphere of our beloved native land, and leave our friends behind for the second and last time until our return. It was on the eve of the final departure from home, by the way, that my own name was first suggested as a future companion. There had been considerable trouble and some disappointment in connection with the surgeons appointed. The first candidate was put aside after acceptance for personal reasons, and the second declined to go at the last moment for family reasons. Without a knowledge of difficulty, I cabled, volunteering my services, though at this time I had not previously written a line, nor was I acquainted with a single individual of the expedition or its representatives. In response to my cable, I received this: 1BHWH 11 Ostend, 10:45 p.m. via 369 Fulton Street, Brooklyn. Dr. Cook, Brooklyn, New York. Pouvez rejoindre Montevideo, mais hivernerai pas. To this I answered, yes, and it was followed by, meet us at Rio, end of September. I had only a few days to prepare myself and my outfit for a journey which might take 1 year, or 10, or a lifetime. But I was determined to go, and so it came about that in September I found myself on the way to meet my prospective companions on the unfriendly bosom of the Atlantic, seasick and miserable from rough weather and tropical heat. I should have had a longer time to afford better means to prepare for a journey of this kind. To consent by cable to cast my lot in a battle against the supposed unsurmountable icy barriers of the South with total strangers, men from another continent, speaking a language strange to me, does indeed seem rash. But I never had cause to regret it. The Antarctic has always been the dream of my life, and to be on the way to it was then my ideal of happiness. To be on the way from it was an ambition quite as strong 2 years later. Captain Lecointe describes the final departure and the voyage down the Atlantic thus. There was a great storm of sentimental and serious enthusiasm as we left Ostend on August 24th. Fathers and mothers, brothers and sisters, and other men's sisters were there to press upon us their last tokens of love. This was done in different ways. Some cried, others laughed, and took the matter in good humor, and still others were angry that one of their number should, with eyes open, go from a warm home to what was predicted to be a certain icy grave. Many of the old seamen about gave gratuitous advice to our friends, based upon their own experiences about Cape Horn, which in substance was generally, these men will never return. As the Belgica drew out from the docks, and we saw for the last time for many months the red faces of sadness, the pale faces of anxiety, the waving handkerchiefs, and as we felt the parting girlish kisses coming with the soft breezes, we were indeed half sorry to leave our little land of home delights. Amid the cheer of enthusiastic voices and the thunder of salutations from whistles and guns, we glided out into the broad Atlantic, whose beating swells were henceforth to be our home and our highway to the chosen field of action, the snowy south polar regions.